The story begins with a family driving through a forest on an adventure. Everything seems peaceful until a deer suddenly runs in front of their car. The driver loses control and the car crashes. Tragically, the parents don't survive. The only one left alive is a little boy named Pete. Scared and all alone, Pete breaks down in tears. Not knowing what to do, he grabs his favorite storybook, puts it in his backpack, and starts walking away from the wreck. A few moments later, he hears something moving through the woods. Frightened, Pete starts running, but a pack of wolves begins chasing him. Just when they're about to catch him, a giant dragon suddenly appears. The creature scares the wolves away and saves Pete's life. Still terrified, Pete asks, "Are you going to eat me?" Instead of answering, the dragon gently slides Pete's backpack back to him, showing that he means no harm. Pete realizes the dragon is friendly, and the two quickly become friends. Pete names the dragon Elliot, and Elliot takes him deep into the forest to safety. 6 years later, the story shifts to a small town near that same forest. An old man named Meacham is entertaining a group of children with stories about a dragon that lives in the nearby woods. He insists that he actually saw the dragon himself, but no one believes him. To everyone else, it's just another fairy tale. Just then, Meacham's daughter, Grace, arrives. She's a forest ranger and has spent years working in those woods. Even she doesn't believe her father's stories. She tells him, "I've been in that forest for years, and I've never seen a dragon." Meacham simply smiles and replies, "Just because you haven't seen something doesn't mean it isn't real." Meanwhile, Pete is still living deep in the forest with Elliot, who has become his best friend. The two spend their days playing together, and we learn that Elliot has a magical ability. He can turn completely invisible. That's the reason no one has ever been able to find him. After a fun day together, they're heading back to their cave when Elliot suddenly hears someone nearby. He instantly turns invisible, while Pete quietly follows the stranger. It's Grace. She's marking trees that are scheduled to be cut down. Pete notices the compass and becomes fascinated by it. While Grace isn't looking, he secretly takes it before sneaking back to the cave. That night, Pete reads from his old storybook, and he and Elliot fall asleep together. The next morning, Pete wakes up after hearing strange noises in the forest. Elliot is still asleep, so Pete goes to investigate alone. He discovers that a man named Gavin is cutting down trees that weren't supposed to be touched. Just then, Grace arrives with her husband, Jack, and orders Gavin to stop. Gavin is Jack's younger brother, but he isn't following the rules. At the same time, Grace and Jack's young daughter, Natalie, spots Pete and secretly follows him into the forest. Pete climbs a tree to hide, and Natalie tries to climb after him, but she loses her grip and ends up hanging from a branch. Pete quickly climbs back to help her, but they both fall to the ground. Natalie gets hurt, but she's okay. She asks Pete his name, and the two introduce themselves. A few moments later, the adults arrive while searching for Natalie. Jack asks why she wandered into the forest alone, and she tells everyone that she was following Pete. Grace is shocked by Pete's appearance. After living in the wilderness for 6 years, he looks completely wild. She gently asks who he is, what he's doing in the forest, and where his parents are. Then she notices the compass around Pete's neck. As she walks toward him to get it back, Pete panics and runs away. Before he can escape, Gavin catches him. Pete falls hard from a tree and loses consciousness. The moment Pete is injured, Elliot senses that his best friend is in danger and immediately begins searching for him. Meanwhile, Grace takes Pete to the hospital. At the same time, Elliot follows Pete's scent through the forest and eventually reaches Gavin and his crew. Furious, Elliot knocks down a massive tree right in front of them. Gavin realizes that something enormous is hiding in the woods, so he decides to hunt it down. Back at the hospital, Pete finally wakes up and is confused to find himself in a hospital bed. A doctor tells Grace that he's going to be fine. Grace asks a police officer who Pete is and how he survived alone in the forest. The officer says they'll investigate and, until they find his family, Pete will be placed in foster care. Pete overhears the conversation. Not wanting to leave Elliot, Pete sneaks out of the hospital and runs away. Around the same time, Natalie goes to check on him, only to discover that his room is empty. She quickly tells everyone that Pete is gone. Lost in the unfamiliar town, Pete has no idea where to go. He keeps calling Elliot's name while running through the streets. Before long, Grace catches up to him and gently stops him. For the first time in years, Pete feels the comfort of someone who truly cares about him. Meanwhile, Gavin and his men discover a giant footprint in the forest. They can't see anything nearby and eventually move on, unaware that Elliot is standing right beside them, completely invisible. Grace takes Pete home, but he tries to run away again. She stops him and tells him that she was once just like him. As a child, she loved the forest so much that it felt like home, which is why she grew up to become a forest ranger. She promises Pete that the next day they'll search for the place where he lived. Pete slowly begins adjusting to life with Grace's family. After spending 6 years in the wild, almost everything feels new to him, but Grace's kindness and patience help him feel safe. That same night, Gavin and his crew return to the forest, searching for the mysterious creature. Beneath a giant tree, they discover the cave where Pete and Elliot have been living. Inside, Gavin finds Pete's old storybook. The moment he picks it up, Elliot attacks. Terrified, the men run back to their truck. Gavin even opens fire, but Elliot easily crushes the gun instead of hurting anyone. Then he lets them escape and secretly follows their truck, believing it will lead him to Pete. The next day, Pete continues bonding with Grace and her family, especially Natalie, who quickly becomes his friend. Then Grace receives a call from the police. They confirm that Pete's parents died in a car accident in that very forest 6 years earlier. Grace is stunned. She can hardly believe Pete managed to survive in the wilderness all by himself for all those years. The officer also explains that a foster care organization is ready to take Pete in and asks Grace to bring him there the following day. Later, Natalie asks Pete who Elliot really is because he keeps talking about him. Instead of answering with words, Pete draws a picture of a giant green dragon and smiles. He's my best friend. Meanwhile, Elliot searches all over town, desperately trying to find Pete. At Grace's house, Natalie tells Pete that the creature he drew is a dragon. She says her grandfather, Meacham, has been telling stories about dragons for years. According to those stories, dragons live far to the north. She points to the North Star and explains that it leads to their true home. Just then, Grace asks Pete if they can talk in private. She thanks him for returning her compass, explaining that it was a gift from her father and even held an old family photo. Grace gently asks Pete how he ended up in the forest. Pete tells her about the car accident and losing his parents. The memory makes him emotional. Grace comforts him by saying that she also lost her mother when she was young, so she understands how painful it is. You aren't alone, she tells him. Pete smiles and replies, I know, because I have Elliot. When Grace asks who Elliot is, Pete shows her the drawing he made of his best friend. Grace is stunned. The picture is clearly a dragon. Pete promises, come with me tomorrow, and I'll introduce you to him. Meanwhile, Gavin visits Jack and begs him to help capture the dragon. He tells him everything that happened in the forest, but Jack doesn't believe a word of it. Frustrated, Gavin leaves with his crew to hunt the dragon by himself. Unknown to them, Grace overhears the entire conversation. For the first time, she begins to believe that a real dragon might actually exist. Later that night, Elliot quietly finds Grace's house. Through the window, he sees Pete happily reading a storybook with Grace, Jack, and Natalie. Watching Pete laugh with his new family, Elliot sadly turns away. He feels like he's already been replaced. Heartbroken, Elliot returns alone to his cave. The next day, Grace visits her father and shows him Pete's drawing. To her surprise, it looks exactly like the dragon Meacham drew years ago. She finally asks him what really happened the day he claimed he saw the dragon. Meacham explains that he was out hunting when the forest suddenly went silent. As darkness surrounded him, he turned around and came face to face with a giant dragon. Terrified, he raised his rifle, but the dragon never attacked. Instead, it simply looked at him before quietly disappearing into the forest. When I told everyone what I'd seen, no one believed me. Grace wonders how she spent years working in those woods without ever seeing the dragon. Meacham smiles and replies, you never saw Pete either, and he was there the whole time. The following day, Grace takes Pete and Natalie to the foster care center, but doesn't bring Pete inside. Instead, they continue into the forest with Meacham. Pete leads them to his hidden treehouse deep in the woods where no one has ever been before. Then he walks into the cave and calls for Elliot. A few moments later, the giant dragon steps out. Grace, Natalie, and Meacham are left speechless. Grace finally realizes that her father had been telling the truth all along. Natalie happily pets Elliot while Meacham gets to see the incredible creature once again after all these years. But the peaceful moment doesn't last. Gavin and his crew suddenly arrive and attack Elliot. They trap him with heavy ropes, and although Pete fights back to protect his friend, the hunters inject Elliot with a tranquilizer before he can escape. Weak and unable to fly, Elliot is captured and taken to Gavin's warehouse, where he's chained up. Jack immediately calls animal control, hoping they'll handle the situation properly, but Gavin refuses to hand Elliot over. He believes the dragon belongs to him now. Convinced that this discovery will make him rich and famous, Gavin plans to show Elliot to the entire world. Pete is heartbroken. He begs everyone to let him and Elliot go, promising they'll disappear and never be seen again. Natalie tells him that Grace had no idea Gavin was planning any of this. Meanwhile, the forest officials arrive at the warehouse. Gavin refuses to hand Elliot over, insisting that the dragon belongs to him because he was the one who found him. Natalie secretly shows Pete a pipe that leads inside the warehouse. The two sneak in and find Elliot chained up. Seeing his best friend trapped like that breaks Pete's heart. While Gavin and the officers try to unlock the main door, Natalie locks it from the inside, buying them enough time to free Elliot. They try to help him fly away, but he's still too weak from the tranquilizer. By the time the officers finally break in, the warehouse appears empty. Everyone assumes the dragon escaped, not realizing Elliot has turned himself invisible. Grace soon arrives and discovers that Pete, Natalie, and Elliot are still hiding inside. They quickly come up with a new plan. Since Elliot can't fly, they'll smuggle him out in a truck. Natalie starts the truck, and just then Meacham crashes through the warehouse, clearing a path for them to escape. They race toward the forest with everyone chasing behind them. Determined to stop Elliot, Gavin pulls his truck in front of them. Meacham slams on the brakes, but they fail. Gavin barely gets out of the way as the truck crashes through his vehicle and speeds across the bridge. Elliot finally regains enough strength to fly and lands on top of the bridge, but when he sees the crowd closing in, he panics and breathes fire across the bridge to keep everyone away. Unfortunately, Grace and Jack's truck becomes trapped in the flames. Gavin tries to help them, but the fire is too intense, and the truck slowly begins slipping off the bridge. Pete desperately calls out to Elliot, "They're good people. Please, save them!" Elliot immediately rescues Grace and Jack, but as he does, the bridge collapses, sending all three of them crashing into the river below. Natalie and Meacham are devastated, believing they didn't survive. Pete, however, never loses hope. He knows Elliot would never let them die. A few moments later, Elliot rises back into the sky with Grace and Jack safely on his back. Watching this act of kindness, Gavin finally realizes how wrong he was. But before anyone can celebrate, helicopters appear overhead, coming to capture Elliot. Knowing it's no longer safe, Pete and Elliot disappear back into the forest. When they return to their cave, they discover that their home has been destroyed. Pete suggests building a new one, but Elliot knows they can never stay there again. Now that humans know he exists, they'll never stop searching for him. Pete realizes it's finally time to say goodbye. Using his storybook, he gently tells Elliot that he'll be happy with Grace and her family, while Elliot needs to live free in the wild. Neither of them wants to part. The two share one last emotional hug before going their separate ways. Back at home, Grace can't stop thinking about Pete. When she finally arrives, she's overwhelmed to find Pete waiting outside. She rushes over and hugs him tightly. Elliot quietly watches from a distance, then turns and flies away, leaving Pete with the family that loves him. Years pass. As time goes by, people slowly stop talking about the dragon. Since no one ever sees Elliot again, he becomes nothing more than a legend. Pete is eventually adopted by Grace and Jack, and together they become a real family. Gavin returns to his normal life, leaving his obsession with the dragon behind. Every now and then, Pete and his family travel north to visit Elliot, and although they now live in different worlds, both Pete and Elliot have finally found the families where they truly belong. With that, the movie comes to a heartwarming end.